Faiz Siddiqui, Washington Post. Twitter begins laying off staff, sending a "your role at Twitter" email to their company account for those staying and personal account for those leaving. Related, Josh Edelson, Bloomberg. Twitter workers file a class action lawsuit against the company in San Francisco for executing mass layoffs without at least 60 days notice, per the WARN Act. I don't feel good about spending a lot of time talking about this. It is the most unfortunate aspect of Elon purchasing Twitter, and in my extremely limited understanding, it is par for the course in businesses that Elon owns and operates. I hope that everyone who is let go today can make forward progress, because yeah, you can file a suit in court, but there's no scenario where that suit gets you your job back. And I suppose even in the unlikely circumstance that it does, would you want it back? But I don't want to dwell on this one anymore, because it's painful to many, many people. New York Times. Sources: Elon Musk weighs adding paid DMs to let users privately message very important tweeters. Docs show Twitter blue checks won't require ID verification. Related, Casey Newton, platformer. Sources: Twitter plans to shut down newsletter platform Review, acquired in January 2021, by the end of 2022, and pauses its new Notes product and crypto wallet. Also related, Reuters. Sources: Elon told Twitter's teams to find up to $1 billion in annual infrastructure cost savings, including reduced spending on cloud services and server space. Privately messaging anyone else in a network as large as Twitter, to say nothing of its more successful siblings in the space: Facebook, Instagram, Snap, WhatsApp, WeChat. Being able to send a direct message to any other user is one of the, I think, most underappreciated aspects of the product. It is, to reference innumerable people who have come before me, an area which has received a moribund amount of investment from Twitter, the business, over the years. And while paying to be able to DM a more important member in the network than yourself is strange and awkward. In a sense, that payment mechanism can do some work for that high value individual in the network, because someone who's willing to spend the money to get your attention as a very important tweeter, in theory anyway, would indicate that they are more likely to be a genuine actor. The proof is very much in the pudding on that front. It remains to be seen if and when this functionality is implemented, how easily or often it is abused or manipulated. But in principle, the notion that there's a user who you want to be able to reach, but they aren't likely to pay attention to you because they have no idea who you are, and it's quite possible that the volume of inbound communication they get is so large that they're only going to engage with individuals that whose names they recognize. Having there be a band there that says, this person you might not know, but they were willing to jump over the hurdle of parting with hard currency in order to get your attention, I think it's possible that you're more likely to give them your attention. So, good. As far as the other stories, shutting down review, say what you will about whether Twitter could have sufficiently invested in long form content, tweet storms, threads. These are in some ways examples of old Twitter's spirit of users manipulating the system in order to effectively create experiences that weren't afforded by the product itself, because operating within that network is sufficiently valuable. So could a long form product have had some value somewhere? Maybe. But to point to the notion of cost savings, something tells me that the amount of engineering effort spent on review is definitely better spent elsewhere. So it makes sense. As well as a notes product, not familiar with that. Crypto wallet, let the people who are going to build the best crypto wallets build the best crypto wallets and then integrate with them. Composability, sort of part and parcel for the crypto universe. And then the notion of finding $1 billion in infrastructure costs that can be cut, I can't ever recall looking closely at Twitter's financials when it was a public company. So it's not, I have no clue how much it's been spending on infrastructure, and therefore the numerator of $1 billion in annual spend, I have no way to determine how material that is. But find places to cut costs wherever you can, and cut as deep as you can, as fast as you can. This is the way you pivot and restructure a business. So that's also not surprising. Wall Street Journal, General Mills and Audi paused Twitter ads, and sources say Pfizer and Mondelez have as well, as concern over content moderation grows. This is quite similar from the story from the other day about ad spend. There is certainly growing uncertainty about what the state of content moderation will be on Twitter going into the future. And brands like General Mills, Audi, Pfizer, they're the pie chart that represents where they do ad spend. I highly doubt Twitter was a meaningful percentage of that chart to begin with. Did that little sliver of Audi's ad spend represent a material amount of revenue to Twitter? Maybe. But frankly, we're never going to know because I don't see a lot of transparency in reporting on the financials of the business in Twitter's future. So I don't think there's a whole lot else there. Julie Clover, Mac Rumors. PayPal plans to support iPhone's Tap to Pay in its PayPal and Venmo iOS apps soon, and Apple Pay to its checkout options on merchant platforms and more. Related, Jennifer Saran, Bloomberg. PayPal reports Q3 revenue up 12% year over year to $6.85 billion versus $6.81 estimated, and payments volume up 14% year over year to $337 billion versus $343.2 estimated. Stock drops 8% plus on lower FY forecast. Public markets, they're strange organisms. You've got a business which is touching almost $500 billion of the global economy, which may not represent a material percentage of the global economy, but it's certainly a large number. So large, in fact, that every 90 days it generates almost $7 billion in revenue. I don't know what it costs to operate PayPal as a business, but it can't be a significant percentage of $6.85 billion. Maybe it is. Maybe they're running this thing fairly lean, but the notion that the public market thinks that because it generated 6.85 versus 6.81 estimated, that the business is somehow 8% less valuable, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But then again, I'm not a finance wonk. In terms of supporting the superior experience on the most dominant device in the United States, of course they will. When they do it, we'll see. This is, frankly, part of how Venmo came into existence, was that it provided a superior experience. It got swallowed up by eBay. Good on them. But how long it takes them to implement the ability for two individuals with iPhones to bump their phones together in order to transact we'll see. Jay Peters, The Verge, hands-on with Netflix's basic with ads. While most shows have pre-roll ads, mid-rolls are more unpredictable. Many popular shows are locked to higher tiers. In all of the discussion that I saw about Netflix shipping an ads product, the notion that certain content in the Netflix library would be unavailable to people who wanted to pay less and therefore be subject to advertising, that was not on my bingo card. And I'll be really interested to see how well that plays out. It'll be difficult to observe Netflix's performance into the future and trace back any changes in performance to this specific function. But I'm not aware of any other streaming players that do it. Maybe they are. I don't pay super close attention. But it doesn't look good, particularly if we're talking about in-house Netflix content, right? If the next great piece of sort of cinematic intellectual property is produced by Netflix and a material percentage of its user base literally can't access it because they're not paying enough, that's a hostile experience. But quite frankly, it's really easy to turn the dial up on how much money you're going to give to any of these businesses and then turn it back down. So maybe that's what more and more people will do. We'll see. Heather Somerville, Wall Street Journal. PitchBook. VCs raised $151 billion across Q1, Q2, and Q3 of 2022, exceeding any prior full year cycle, concentrated among large funds at Sequoia, Lightspeed, and others. The business of closely observing how much money the venture industry has to place bets with is, a lot of people like to play that game. I don't think it's particularly relevant because, again, if you look at the denominator, which is all monies that are put into financial instruments or investment vehicles of every stripe, the venture industry still represents a very small amount. And yes, there's some macro dialogue about what is that money not doing by being handed over to venture funds. That's also a macroeconomic conversation that I'm just not equipped to participate in. So, Annie Palmer, CNBC. Amazon pauses hiring for roles in its corporate workforce after announcing in October plans to freeze hiring for corporate roles in its retail business. Another indicator that the market is headed into a period of greater uncertainty when the businesses that produce more financial success than any other in the history of mankind are pausing on adding new talent. Why they're doing it, how long they'll do it, what will happen to the person who might otherwise have received a job offer from Amazon. Again, macroeconomic trends. The one thing I will say is underneath every Amazon, there are an entire ecosystem of smaller businesses, some of which not small at all in absolute terms, and some percentage of that ecosystem will follow suit and will freeze hiring. Others will see it as a moment where someone that they might not have been able to hire because that person was going to get an offer from Amazon is now available. So there's benefit to be had even as the largest entities appear to take on a more conservative stance. Vaz Panagiotopoulos, Wired. A look at the use of biometric surveillance tech in European soccer stadiums. 15,000 cameras will monitor fans in 8 stadiums at the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. I'm psyched for the World Cup. I know that it's not perfect. I know that there is controversy, but the notion that the majority of countries in the world have the opportunity to send a team of athletes to compete with teams from every other country in a sport, in a single sport, I think it's a beautiful thing. As someone who grew up watching the Olympics because it was effectively the only time where I could see the sports that I participated in competition, the notion that any child can observe the best in the world competing with the same game and the same set of rules that they themselves compete in with people in their communities of their own age, it's a beautiful thing. Biometric surveillance and security at large gatherings, I know it's worrisome. I have no doubt that we will learn by the end of this World Cup that there are all manner of aspects to how that security tool chain is implemented, operated, managed. There will be issues, but quite frankly, if you expect anything different, I don't know that you're paying attention. There are billions of people around the planet who are carrying state-of-the-art surveillance equipment in their pockets at all times. The notion that those same components would not be utilized to provide some sense of security and safety in large public arenas I think it'd be naive to expect anything different. Richard Waters, Financial Times. Combined capital spending by Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Meta, and Microsoft grew 32% in 2021, same as in 2020, to 140 billion, and 20% in the first 9 months of 2022. My standard caveat, macroeconomics, not a place where I feel the greatest amount of comfort in pontificating. These businesses all produce extreme amounts of financial returns, and therefore it should come as no surprise that they take a significant percentage of that and reinvest it in their businesses. Are they large numbers? Yes. Can we say anything meaningful about how large those numbers are? I don't think so. There are areas in each of these businesses where one could make the case that their workforce should be better compensated. The stories about those who are tasked with having to do the human curation on data that is revolting, toxic, reprehensible, which is uploaded to the services that many of these businesses operate. Should those people be better compensated? Absolutely. How these businesses are going to be incentivized to do that, I don't know. But aside from those cases on the margins, the majority of the workforce that drives success for these businesses, they're some of the most well-compensated people on the planet. So you compensate your workforce extraordinarily well, you still have a tremendous sum of money left over. What else do you do but put it into your own business? Jordan Novitt, CNBC. Atlassian reports Q1 revenue up 31% year over year to 807.4 million versus 806.4 estimated, and forecasts lower than expected Q2 revenue. Stock drops 20% plus after falling 54% in 2022. I know during earnings moments in time, my default position is the street doesn't really make a lot of sense in how it adjusts the valuations of businesses. I haven't followed Atlassian, but a 20% drop after already having, since the beginning of this calendar year, there's something afoot in that business. I don't know what it is. Maybe we'll find out. Fortune. How Reddit's blockchain-based collectible avatars, which avoid the NFT label, became popular. Polygon data shows the total sales volume was $10 million plus by November 2nd. I bought one. I bought one because Reddit is, to me, the final form of forum software. It is a platform which enables communities to self-organize, self-moderate with a baseline of standards applied by the business, e.g., I'm almost positive you can't form a subreddit around trading CSAM media, like almost certainly. But so long as you conform to that baseline, you and your fellow users who are interested in having a community built around selvage denim can organize however you want to organize and operate your community however you want to operate it. And that to me is a sort of primitive that the social applications which have been built on the internet over the last 20 odd years should all contain. And the idea that they want to create a market for artists and other users who want to produce digital collectibles and sell them, that they should support it. And using the state-of-the-art tools for transacting in digital collectibles is the appropriate thing to do. We'll see what happens. We'll see whether a month from now or 6 months from now or 12 months from now, the $5 or $10 that I spent on a collectible Reddit avatar is worth more. But quite frankly, that's not the end goal, right? People didn't buy baseball cards so that they could turn around and sell them for more money. They bought baseball cards because they had a personal investment in baseball and being able to hold some sort of symbol that represented their interest in baseball was worth something. And I don't think that digital collectibles are ultimately going to behave any differently. The fact that the majority of the offerings in this market are profile photos, images that people use to represent themselves in digital communities, is kind of obvious. You know, in a past world, Flickr was the place where people collected and interacted with other collectors around their passion for photography. There are innumerable people who are selling NFTs of their photography on Twitter today, for example. Does Instagram become a place where, rather than hosting photos that you yourself have taken as a user, it hosts the collection of images which you own and have, digital provenance for? I don't know. But if they don't, someone else will go build that. Someone else will go build Flickr for today's world, where being able to maintain provenance of a particular image over time, and to be able to possibly, but not necessarily exchange those images for financial gain, that's a thing that's going to exist. And Reddit getting out in front of that is smart. So good on them. Mark Gurman, Bloomberg. Sources: Apple paused hiring in October for many jobs outside of R&D, including some corporate functions and standard hardware and software engineering roles. Covered this earlier today. You can use it as some sort of tea leaf to be read about overall health of the market or Apple's strength and future as a business. It's not for me. Kith Leswig, CNBC. Block Q3. Revenue up 17% year over year to 4.52 billion versus 4.49 estimated. Gross profit up 38% year over year to 1.57 billion versus 1.53 estimated. And Cash App gross profit up 51% year over year. Stock up 9% plus. I'm not aware of the intricacies of Block's business. It's therefore entirely unclear to me how gross profit from the Cash App, which is there to make financial transfers between end users, cryptocurrency purchases, a more streamlined experience. But the notion that it could generate 51% increase in gross profit from a year ago, that's a hell of a number. And again, the idea that that performance over the last 90 days as compared to the same 90 days a year ago is worthy of only a 10% increase in the value of the business in the public market. I don't get it. Block's business fundamentals, I think, will be really interesting going forward. If it's not already clear, this is where the majority of Jack Dorsey's attention is right now. And I'll be very curious to see whether or not he's able to steer this payments business into the tailwind, to whatever extent tailwinds exist, of cryptocurrency and its evolution. I'm looking forward to it. Kyle Wiggers, TechCrunch. Dataloop, which offers data annotation and unstructured data management tools, raised 33 million Series B, led by Nokia Growth, bringing its total funding to $50 million. I'm not versed in what Dataloop does. The notion that it's got a Series B that brings its total funding to $50 million, only thing that makes me think is that's a much smaller number than most of the Series B venture investments I feel like I've seen over the last year. So maybe that's indicative of something, or maybe it's not indicative of anything alarming, but instead is a return to reasonable, rational venture investing as contrasted to the way SoftBank has done its venture investing through its Vision Fund over the last year, which is not conservative, would be a way to describe it. The Verge, AMD unveils the RX 7900 XTX for $999 and the lower powered RX 7900 XT for $899. Its first GPUs built on its RDNA 3 chipset architecture, shipping on December 13th. The GPU business is, if you look at the last 6 months, was trending down, I think, if I recall correctly, as a result of Ethereum migrating to proof of stake as opposed to proof of work, and there therefore being less need to have high-powered GPUs that are churning constantly, or at least when it's economically advantageous to do so. But I personally think that GPUs are only going to become more necessary as more applications that require, high-powered parallel processing come into being. Every AI-generated media application, to my knowledge anyway, relies on GPU performance. So if you're going to run GPT-3 in order to generate automated wedding thank you card text from your raw notes inside of a Google Sheet, which is a thing that exists, it's wild. Go find it on Twitter. To say nothing of you're going to generate synthetic still images or 60 synthetic images per second, also known as synthetic motion. You're going to need compute power, and GPUs are the best compute power bang for your buck today. I think the other big category is VR. I think that creating fully immersive three-dimensional environments is a thing you need GPU power to accomplish. And those are exactly what we're all going to use to put our goggles on, right? For the foreseeable future. We're not going to be able to wear glasses and effectively interact with the physical world. What's going to be much easier to do is to exit the physical world and to enter a synthetic one, and you're going to have to render that. So I don't know what is totally awesome about the RDNA 3 chipset architecture. I don't know how these AMD GPUs stack up against NVIDIA's latest and greatest, but I hope they enable the people who are going to go create the next generation of, let's face it, art and experiences, which I think you could reasonably label as a subcategory to art. More power in their hands. It's a good thing. Bill Toulis, bleeping computer. Look out. Almost 50% of Android phones used by US state and local government staff run outdated versions of the operating system, exposing them to hundreds of vulnerabilities. Never pay the ransom. This is not good. This is, if you're not paying for the most secure tools you can get your hands on, you'll wind up paying in some other way. I'm not thrilled at the thought that government employees are doing their jobs, which may or may not directly affect me as a citizen of their jurisdictions, municipalities, with tools which can be compromised easily. I would rather live in a world where those people are all using the most secure tools they can get their hands on. One of the most secure tools one can get one's hands on is end-to-end encrypted messaging tools. I think it's also worth pointing out that in the past, a number of the ransomware attacks, the door that the attacker ultimately gets through is email, because someone with access to the right system, target system, still has an email account that anyone on planet Earth can direct information at. And if they direct a URL and the user clicks on the URL, you're off to the races. So my particular, obviously sort of naive and oversimplified solution here is, if you run a local government or state government, you should remove email from your computing architecture and move to something that is more secure. That's not strictly what this story is about. It's about vulnerabilities inherent in older versions of the Android operating system. But it's the thing I feel like is relevant.